It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast.
Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we've got Ryan Ansin. He is with Revolutionary Clinics, founder and manager right now. Ryan, thanks for being with us at the Talking Hedge.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about, you're in Massachusetts. At least you have a rec shop. I saw some stuff online. I think you also grow. Maybe you're vertically integrated. Maybe you can explain what it is and what you do.
Sure. So I'm in general on the investment side within the industry for the last almost 7 years. And one of the vehicles that we've been most involved in was co-founding the company Revolutionary Clinics, which is, as you pointed out, a vertically integrated license holder here in Mass. We really believe that this industry was amply or appropriately complicated, that we wanted to go deep into one geography and really understand it and really deliver consistent products, consistent service within one space, while a lot of my peers who have been around the industry for the same amount of time or longer have expanded to be thin across many geographies. Mm-hmm. And so Rev is now one of the largest wholesalers in Massachusetts. We have real pride and care in our medical category of our business. We have 3 medical facilities. And now in 2022, we're starting to open up adult use shops as well. Lots in Rev and lots outside of Rev, within 16 holdings and 2 funds that I participate in, and excited to dive in with you.
Yeah, it's new emerging market in Massachusetts. Are you guys adult use yet?
So probably 85% of our revenue comes from the adult use market because of our wholesale and distribution side. Okay. And we have 1 store opening up in Leominster, Massachusetts, probably August, September. And then one of our stores in Somerville, Mass, evolves from medical to adult use, perhaps the same month, perhaps 1 month later. And 2023 will mark our opening of our Cambridge stores.
Okay, so it's Maryland. I was thinking of that's medical only. So you guys are adult.
Oh, use. You guys being Massachusetts, yeah. Massachusetts has been adult use since 2018.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Interesting. So you guys are not mostly focusing, but you guys seem to be early on to the game, and so therefore have kind of first mover advantages in supplying a lot of the markets. In general, at the wholesale level, was that organic? Was that intended, or did that happen? Without?
Yeah, that was a partial pivot, I'd say. So we worked really hard early on to get real estate in areas of the state that voted overwhelmingly in favor of adult use sales, even though the program hadn't rolled out yet. That makes economic sense. And so we have 2 stores in Cambridge, Mass, 1 in Somerville, and both of those cities have taken very long, pensive, strategic approaches to opening their stores and who gets to open and when. And that's a topic for maybe a 1 or 2 hour podcast of the socioeconomic advantages and disadvantages of partnering up within the industry versus having a free market, and certainly an interesting thing to talk about. We started this company as a social enterprise, as has been my life. I started Rev to democratize earnings in cannabis and to help revitalize old mill towns. And so the social equity side, economic empowerment side of the industry is critically important to us, has always been a part of the company's ethos. And so we understood when Cambridge and Somerville wanted to implement particular rules to force the hand of all different types of license holders. So we were prepared to be meaningful wholesale players in that scenario. We also, in my family, had a background in the footwear industry, which is a balance of working both in branded retail and branded manufacturing, and then white label. And for us, it always comes down to doing what you say you're going to do, delivering high quality products, as it says on the purchase order, and outpacing your competition by being really helpful to your business partners. And so we could have never imagined having gone into 2 cities that voted north of 75% in favor of adult use cannabis, that, halfway through 2022, they still wouldn't be open. But I'm incredibly proud of the team for delivering 99.85% on time, full and accurate deliveries, as a logistics company needs to and should, while catering to the market demands of constantly changing flavors of the day, flavors of the month. And it's not easy, but super exciting when you can make those trains arrive on time.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of philanthropic ideology surrounding the cannabis industry. There's a lot of altruism and kind of good feeling behind that. It's medicinal, and there's a lot of folks who see through the Schedule 1. You guys opened up in a shoe warehouse. I think there's a lot of maybe metaphors to that, talking about outpacing the competition and just, walking in your shoes for a minute. Have you ever felt like the cannabis industry should be unionized in the way that Have a Heart here in Seattle unionized several years ago? Kind of now you're seeing Starbucks and Amazon and the revolution for workers and the huge shift that's happening. Do you feel that same thing over in Massachusetts in what's happening and the economy overall? And then as it pertains to cannabis, are you implementing that at the local level?
Sure. So lots of questions there. First, I am not an expert on unions and unionization. However, what I've seen in the situation, I think in Michigan, as it relates to Amazon that you're describing, if it's not Michigan, I apologize. But generally that starts with real discord, real concern within the employee population. And we believe in treating our teammates and our teams holistically. There's a great book called Holacracy, and a great theory around holacracy, that we bring our whole selves, our full selves to our jobs in order to benefit ourselves, in order to live life in a happy, healthy way, and in order to achieve the mission of the company. I think in the cannabis industry, because you're building the plane while flying it, it's really complicated. You can break even and still owe the government taxes. So it's economically a difficult space to be in. I think for all of those reasons and a lot more, there are a lot of really distressed operators and distressed assets in cannabis. And distress will bring discord and discomfort within the employee population as well. And so the scenarios that I have seen play out in cannabis surrounding unionization hasn't been because unions are necessarily organically the best option if everything is going really well. I think it's because employees needed their rights to be upheld. So we at Rev constantly, and within my portfolio companies elsewhere, are constantly working to make sure that our employees feel really empowered, promoting from within, making sure that this is a career, not just a job, paying the best wages in the industry. Again, it all goes back to why we started the company, to democratize earnings in cannabis. It's the same as what I used to do in other luxury goods, that if your margins are sufficient enough, everyone should win together. That can come in many forms. And when there's a lot of distress and a lot of unhappy employees, I think unions are one of the forms that will start to occur more in cannabis.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of folks over here on the West Coast that put in way too much money in the beginning and created distressed assets on their own. I'm wondering if that's creating FOMO for you in the emerging market over in Massachusetts, or do you have any FOMO? Do you try not to look at opportunities elsewhere with distressed assets and get outside of Massachusetts, or are you just strictly focused in where you're at?
Me, Ryan, or us, Revolutionary? What's more interesting?
Either. Well, I guess you.
Sure. So I've driven from Humboldt to San Diego a dozen times, looking at opportunities or deals, however you want to call it, in California. And I've never directly made an investment into a California operating asset. Funds that I'm invested in have. So Flocana, as an example, I'm an investor in. And it's been really enlightening to watch that. Has it been attractive to take it on as a distressed asset? I can tell you objectively, no. The tax structure in California to start with creates a massive disadvantage. California tax structure plus 280E, plus the fact that you're bringing sand to the beach. Boy, it's a great place to generate revenue, and it's a really hard place to make money. So no, California has not been attractive enough for me to go into directly as an investor or an operator. What I will say, given where you're located, to my understanding, in Washington, right?
Yes.
Up near Seattle.
Right.
Yeah. I think the other side of the coin to what I just said about California, and this is true there as it is in Washington and Oregon, when operators can humbly, efficiently, and economically operate in free markets like Washington and Oregon, they can work anywhere. If you can generate sufficient margin in a wine growing region, right, where the soil is so incredible that, and the sun is so right, and the humidity is so right, that you can generate biomass at a really inexpensive cost, and then consistently create a product thereafter. My God, what a lesson to bring to the rest of the country. And so, while as an investor, I'm not interested in 100% of what I've seen in California, probably 95% of what I've seen from deal flow coming from Washington and Oregon. I do absolutely applaud the visionaries, the employees, the chemists who are making it work in these normalized markets. So here in Massachusetts, yes, we have a lot of business strategies that come from outside of the industry, but also I've had the benefit of not just being an operator and a founder with Rev, but I see, 20 deals a week, good, bad, and ugly, from other states. Mm-hmm. And so I can take lessons from the future and try to show my team here what is bound to happen when supply outstrips demand, and when brands become a dime a dozen. I think there are something like 25,000 cannabis brands in the United States, about 15,000 of which are on the Western seaboard, and they all think that they're going to go to the moon. Meanwhile, as we saw in footwear across generations, to create a brand is really an exercise in creating trust. It's not about being a flash in the pan. And in cannabis, because there's no centralized manufacturing and it's such a new industry, those are really hard circumstances to create a brand within, to create brand trust and consistency. So all of these lessons that we get to take from normalized markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how many brands are in Oklahoma alone with 7,500 licenses and all the consolidation that needs to happen.
Unreal.
Be an actual market. Yeah.
Yeah.
With all those deals, you're seeing 20 deals a week. What are some of the prices per pound? Are you still seeing ridiculous, like $3,000 a pound? for some of these like emerging markets. Like I bet you Arizona, whoever's writing a deck in Arizona has got like $7,000 a pound. Somebody in Philly probably thinks it's going to be $10,000 a pound. Are you still seeing crazy valuations, arbitrary numbers, and stupid numbers?
Yeah. Because of the sake of time, short answer, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I can give you all kinds of examples to it, and I can give you the timelines as to when that normalizes and the amount of capital per capita that it takes to get to that normalization rate. So there's math to it, but short answer, yes.
All right. We kind of are starting to get out of, are trying to start to get out of this issue with supply chain constraints. China's still locked down. That's going to cause a lot of issues. There's still container ships grounded left and right when they're not sinking. And all of that kind of brings to light the supply chain constraints that are still in existence. You guys are growing from soil. There's a lot of medium that you need within their back guano and all of these fertilizers and issues. And then when you're making your finished goods like edibles, you're going to need sugar and all of these ingredients. What was it like during the pandemic and the supply chain issues? How difficult and challenging was it to try and just be in business?
Gosh, I thought I had everything teed up, and then you broadened it and said just to be in business. So there are really three questions that I'll pull out of that one, and just ping them into me. One is, how did the pandemic and the macro supply chain issues affect our business and the industry? Second is, what are we doing and what do I care about relative to the supply chains in MIPS, in marijuana infused products and downstream products? Third is, how did the pandemic affect our business? My God, I'll work backwards. The pandemic has really impacted our company in many ways, but as an example, in January, we had 70% of our staff in our factory, which is only one portion of our company, but 70% of the staff either got COVID or through contact tracing, we realized were within proximity that they were in danger. And so the throughput coming through in January into February sales was drastically down. And so mitigating that, especially during a normalization period when margins are already being crushed here in Massachusetts, was really troubling, was really hard. Equally so, the opposite side of that coin is watching a team not panic, not believe that we had lost any sort of secret sauce, maintain 99+% on time and full delivery with integrity and call every one of our clients and tell them what's going on. That allows for a business to continue to thrive going forward. So March and April sales are again, really, really solid. And that goes back to treating people really well and being part of a team. So go back to your question on unions or not. It's really about, is this team rowing in the same boat? And gosh, when you're taking hits from a pandemic and normalization at the same time, you want to make sure that that's the case, which I'm proud that it is. On the supply chain for living things, the soil that we have, as an example, that becomes really complicated because suppliers are digging deeper and deeper, trying to nationalize or bring all of the soil in domestically, and so that becomes pretty gnarly what's coming into the factory, and we need to be really careful there, avoiding aphids and avoiding other IPM issues. And then, most importantly, in our company, while this it wasn't catalyzed by the pandemic or by supply chains within the supply chain issues within the pandemic. My background is partially in the supply chain management and transparency world, in fashion, in diamonds and beyond, food supply chains as an example. And so what Rev is doing right now that I'm really excited about is carrying out a program called Know Your Farm, where we are undertaking an initiative of going through every single one of our inputs, our chocolate, our sugar, our vanilla, our MCT oil, our coffee, anything, even the metal in our vape pens is being scrutinized internally, so that we can have confidence when we're delivering a product to a wholesale customer or a wholesale client or an end customer, that we know eventually exactly where everything came from. And I say eventually because this is not an easy process. I've done this with fashion companies as an example. And if our input is cotton, I can solve this for you in a few weeks. With over 200 SKUs coming out of the factory, it is hyper complex, and this will never be done. But what I find really interesting, frustrating, perverse, backwards, upside down, so many things in cannabis is that this industry, unlike fashion, is supposed to represent peace, love, joy, togetherness. We're supposed to generate enough capital for reparations. We're supposed to have all kinds of different license classes so that we have a really democratized industry. All of those things I believe in and find to be wonderful to be carried out in a commercial fashion. But it's backwards to then focus exclusively on cost of goods sold, on COGS, and have commodity sugar, commodity chocolate, commodity coffee, where we know how ugly those supply chains are. There are lawsuits every month against the big producers of those, generally coming out of Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And so to get to the bottom of every single one of our inputs we're about 18 months into this process. We're really proud of the progress that we've made. And I think we can now deliver a product. I know we are now delivering a product that matches the ethos of our buyers. This has been done in every other industry. And I just think that it's a cool opportunity to do this at the foundation of this one.
Will the industry continue to have that feel good, sense around it, or is it going to just be up to individual companies, like Tom's Shoes, that has kind of an SRI or ESG mood to that? Is the industry just going to be commoditized and just race to the bottom in terms of pricing, and then just a few companies left over? What's your take?
Every state goes through a series of cycles, and margin compression and the survival under the circumstances of market compression is equally cyclical. So I think if you chose a moment in time, it could look like this is an absolute race to the bottom. And probably if you go out 10 years from now and look backwards, the majority of products sold will be at very thin margins, and it will look like largely a race to the bottom. However, there's a very robust, meaningful, profitable craft brewing industry, as an example. And a lot of those companies either have really sophisticated approaches, unlike the commoditized options. They get purchased at pretty healthy revenue multiples or EBITDA multiples, and hopefully that continues to better the overall space. I think that's happening in fashion. It's certainly happening in food. But sometimes I feel I am in echo chambers, that our coastal communities are different than our entire U.S. population. Mm. So to the answer more succinctly is, to an extent, yes, I think the cannabis industry has an opportunity to do it differently, ubiquitously. Will it? What I've learned in fashion, diamonds, and elsewhere is people say one thing and then they shop with their wallets. Mm. And that's really disappointing. But I think that this space could do it differently.
Mm. Okay. What about locally where you're at? So with RevClinics, I believe you guys have 3 locations. Is that something you guys are going to be expanding out and trying to claim more market share? I know you're just looking at Massachusetts, but are you looking at trying to have total domination within Massachusetts? Are you going to be expanding?
Sure. So one, there's no total domination in Massachusetts, probably or elsewhere, but Massachusetts specifically, because you can only have 3 adult use stores. You can have a max of 3 of every type of license. And so we could have a max of 6 licenses and then be as helpful as possible to myriad others. There will be no domination. What Rev will do is find other single state or small companies that reflect our values, reflect our operating strategy of going deep, really caring about our people, really caring about our consumers, and not looking at this as a financial manipulation tool. I see too much of that in the cannabis industry, and it's frankly not effective. In an industry with this type of tax burden, tax treatment, and a commoditization race to the bottom in vertical integration, financial manipulation doesn't work. It's really, really hard. And so we believe in running a real business that generates free cash flow, regardless of all the excuses not to, and to adjust EBITDA, as you hear in the public filings. It's all about cash flow. And there are a small number of other companies like that. And we all see the future together, but don't rush into anything, because it's hard to compare apples to apples in cannabis with different regulatory schemes in every state.
When you see companies running out and trying to grab revenue in the form of an acquisition, and they're spending 800, 900 million, when we saw Select and some of these California-based companies running up and grabbing, producers in Oregon for astronomical sums, does that make you, does that give you nightmares, or does that, bring excitement to your life? Like, where are you at when you look at the numbers? And for me, I'm looking at it like that's a $420 million valuation. It's arbitrary. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. That's an $800 million deal that was not arm's length. That's going to be an issue down the road. I'm seeing these things, and it doesn't really bring excitement to me, but I'm sure a lot of these immediate shareholders are getting really excited. What is your opinion?
I have a few companies that I've participated in that have had astronomical valuations after I went in, and I guess I'm happy for that. Do I believe that that's sustainable, or that every company deserves these high watermarks? For sure not. For sure not. I think it's really interesting to pick apart why each deal happened, and we don't have time for that today, but getting to know you over the course of time, I think that there's lessons to be learned from each of them, and there's real value in many of them, not all. But if you step back and you think, boy, did they get acquired for distribution? Did they get acquired for some technology? Did they get acquired for team? Did they get acquired to manage the other coast? A West Coast acquisition of East Coast company. I think there are lessons in each one, and if you're trying to time the market, you'll generally fail, especially in an industry that won't refill your coffers when you've been operating at a cash flow negative strategy. And so I think this industry, like many, is an exercise in not being attracted to the shiny penny and doing what you say you're going to do. I say to friends outside of the cannabis industry, if you're not a jerk, if you do what you say you're going to do and you generate consistent products, that's actually a winning strategy in cannabis. In another industry, that's how you punch your ticket to get in. In cannabis, so few people do that, and everyone's just trying to scramble for territory. Again, in an industry where, because of the tax treatment, if you break even, you still owe money. But people spend every dollar that they bring in. April 15th of this year, which just happened, April 15th of next year is going to be a wild time for distressed buyers. How I spend about 20% of my time is working with a private equity firm that doesn't come into an industry with less than a $300 million check. There are only so many of those opportunities in the cannabis space. And the deals that we're looking at are companies that, from the outside in, you would not assume are on death's doorstep
Mm-hmm.
because they have big chests and big bravado, and they're on CNBC all the time. And then you look at their debt stack, you realize, gosh, they assumed, just looking at the math, they assumed that this was going to, that the Safe Banking Act or something was going to give. And in 2022, 2023, they could refinance their multi-$100 million debt loads that they took on in 2020 and 2021. Mm-hmm. And I bet there was big celebration when they got those $200, $300 million checks back then. And then, 13, 14% interest rates across that type of debt. When construction slows down, when competition increases, when margins decrease, and there's no movement in safe banking, mm-hmm. In an industry that does not have bankruptcy protection, something happens. And we're going to see a lot of that in the next few quarters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been saying we should be expecting a lot of consolidation, capitulation, just people who haven't paid themselves a salary in years. All of that's going to come to an end really quick. What about your own exit strategy? Are you going to be a Larry's Handy Mart in a world of 7-Elevens? Or are you going to sell out? And I say that because when legalization happens, a lot of these, one-off stores or even three-off stores could get drowned out by, a 7-Eleven, for example, if 7-Eleven starts selling cannabis. So what is your exit strategy? Are you going to survive until the end of time, or are you already looking at an exit strategy?
As I said, I think that Rev's most organic option is to not find, because we found them, but to partner with somewhere between 2 and 4 other groups that have similar philosophies as we do. And when US public exchanges open to our type of business, that's a real option. But operating with exit as the goal generally creates a deficiency at some point. We operate as if we're going to hold this individually forever. That won't be the case. Our team gets poked at all the time because we have really, really good people who are in it for the long haul. Our strategies are built for this type of this type of change, normalization in a really rapid succession. This Kiva is not my company, but I wear their shirt proudly because we manufacture for them here in Kiva, here in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Same thing that we've done in other industries as a family. And so I think operating for free cash flow with a happy team for as long as it takes to do it right, I think is a much healthier way to approach this space in particular. I spend 60 or 70% of my time in cannabis. I'm in private equity and venture capital and other industries, and hitting a $5 million ARR in technology could get you a $50 to $100 million exit. And so there's good reason to build other types of companies for immediate exit if you see the need and you can time the market. But cannabis has so much complexity and so many falling knives at the same time that you really need to operate conservatively.
Mm-hmm. Leafly is going to ring the bell on the NASDAQ on 4/20. What does that mean for the industry as we're seeing more companies go public? What would it mean for you guys if you were publicly traded? You're talking about private equity, but on the public marketplace, different scenario. Is that intriguing to you when plant-touching based companies can be treated equally on the big board exchanges? Is that an excitement or is that a liability?
Oh, I think it's an excitement. Professional, responsible companies get rewarded by public markets. Will we do it, as a reaction? Absolutely not, because there are downsides to there's downsides and a real expense. There's a real cost to public earnings or being held to public earnings. And I like operating a company for 3, 5, 10-year outlooks, not for quarter over quarter notches. Mm-hmm. But if and when plant touching companies are allowed to trade on these major exchanges, what that signals is banking is in play. Institutional capital is in play. And that I'm very excited about. I'm excited about it for our companies. I'm also excited about it because even though not everybody gets along between the different factions in cannabis, in order for social equity and economic empowerment license holders to really excel and to succeed, by succeed, I don't mean open, I mean create a sustainable business. Banking needs to change for them too. The government can't give major grants without banking regulation, banking reform. So yeah, I'm excited about the same access to capital as we would achieve in any other industry via the public markets. Or I'm just excited for the fact that the next Cargill is going to be built. That's a wonderful opportunity.
Ryan, we covered a lot in this short period of time. Anything else at this point that you want to dive into before we go?
No, this is all to the benefit of your listeners, and I'm always available. So I won't whiteboard, but always happy to share my opinion. As my co-founder says, he's 83 years old, and I try to listen to people twice or more my age. Those who live by a crystal ball eat a lot of glass. So take all of this with a grain of salt, but we've seen a lot of this play out in other states, and Rev is positioned to do it in mass to succeed. And I just hope that the whole industry, all the factions that I've mentioned, can find the positivity in what each other are doing and work together. That would be my hope for 2022.
If people want to find out where you're at, social media, website, or otherwise, where can they find you?
I'm not on social media, but I'm accessible on LinkedIn. I have a grizzly old beard on LinkedIn because it limits the people that reach out to me by about 50%. And so don't be fooled by that. Otherwise, you can find Revolutionary Clinics, and then my holding company is called Ramagius, Ramagious, and that's just a website, just an old-fashioned shingle.
All right. Good news. I think we can put RevClinics in the YouTube description without YouTube flipping out on us like they have in the past. So we'll do that, as well as Ryan's LinkedIn contact, and you can bug him all day long. But with that, I think we're gonna have to roll this one up. So I want to thank my guest, Ryan Ansin. He is the founder president of RevClinics. Ryan, thanks again for being with us at the Talking Hedge.
Thank you. I just want to point one thing out as we're still recording. Yeah. I'm really proud to be co-founder. We don't have a president. We have an excellent CEO who's my partner, who runs this along with a really adept COO. And I'm happy to be as helpful as I can, but it would be inauthentic to walk away as founder and president without mentioning the fact that, thank God, other people are making these trains arrive on time. It's a really solid team. So thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.
With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.